In this tutorial, we are continuing our subsystem series for beginners by building a complete inventory system in Unity. You will learn how to add items, remove items, clear the inventory, and check if an item already exists before adding it. This is part 2 of this series, so if you haven't watched the first video on the subsystem series yet, be sure to check it out first. The link is available in the description box. Huge thanks to Mustafa Ünal for supporting me on Patreon, and a special thanks to Zainab for joining the higher tier membership on my Patreon page and unlocking all of the exclusive benefits. Now let's dive right into it. Let's make inventory manager scripts. To do that, go over to your project tab, assets, right click, go create, then go scripting, and then choose this mono behavior script, and you can name it to something like inventory manager, and I have it inside my soft folder. Over here you can see the inventory manager script. Now let's attach this script to any game object in the hierarchy. I'm gonna create a game manager game object. So let's go to hierarchy. I'm gonna right click, let's create an empty game object. I will reset the transform, and I'm gonna call this game object to something like game manager, something just like that. And now I'm gonna attach my inventory manager script to that game object. And now let's open up our inventory manager script by double clicking on it. And this script right over here, it will be responsible for adding the item and removing the item, and also check it. Also it's gonna check the item is already there or not. So we're gonna remove the update function, we don't need, and we're gonna use the start function later, so I'm gonna leave it. And let's remove this comment. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a list of items, and before we make the list, make sure you just go to top of your class and include this namespace called using system. We have to use this system dot collection dot generic. Sorry, this will be collection dot dot generic before we use the list. It's gonna allow us in order to use the list. So we're gonna make a public and list, and make sure you type this list and then make these arrows. And inside these arrows, what type of list is just gonna be, it's gonna be a item data list. So we're gonna type item data, and we can call it something like owned items. So let's call it owned items. And now we're gonna set equal to a new list, and the list type is item data. Make first bracket and then close that up with semicolon. And now we're gonna make a function in order to add the item. So let's make a function, and we're gonna mark this function as public because we're gonna call it through other scripts, so that is the reason. So we're gonna make a public void, and let's call it something like add item, and it's gonna take item data, basically what type of item we want to add. So it's gonna take the parameter item data, and we can call it something like item, just like that. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna add the item to this owned item list that we created, and by default it's gonna be empty. But before we add the item, we need to make sure if the item is already inside our owned item list. So what we will do, before we add the item, we're gonna check. So let's use the if condition, and over here we're gonna check. We will go to owned item list, and then we're gonna use this dot contains, and then make this first bracket, and inside you just have to pass the item. So in my case, I'm gonna pass my item. So if the item is already there, it means that if owned items dot contains, and the item, if it's already contained, that means we have to stop adding that item to our owned item list. So I'm gonna type this return simply, and we do know that after return, whatever we're gonna do, it's not gonna be execute at all. It means the item will not be added. But let's suppose the item is not inside our owned item list. That means we need to add the item. So we will go to owned item list, and then we're gonna use this add function, and now it's gonna take the item that we want to add. So we're gonna pass our item parameter that we put it inside this add item function. And now we also gonna make a function in order to remove the item. So we're gonna make a public void, and let's call it something like remove item. And it's gonna take the item data, which item we want to remove. So we need to pass the parameter which will be item data, and let's call it something like item. And let's make first bracket and some curly base sorry and some curly brackets we need to make. And before we remove the item, we need to make sure if the item is inside our owned item list. If that is the case, then we have to remove it. So we're gonna check. So let's use the if condition. We will go to owned item list. So let's go to owned item list, then contains, and now we're gonna pass the item. If that is the case, it means we have to remove it. Means the item is already inside our owned item list. It's contain the item, we can see. It means we have to remove the item. So we will go to owned item list, and now we're gonna use this remove function, and it's gonna take the item that we remove. So we're gonna pass our item because we want to remove it. Now we're gonna make a function in order to check the item inside our owned items. You can think of basically the backpack. And now we're gonna make a function. So let's make a public. We can simply type void, but because we want to check and we just want to return true or false, so we're gonna make a bool type function just like that. And we can call it something like has item, and it's gonna take the item data because we need to check if the item is or is there or not. Then basically we using this function because when we gonna buy the item, we need to check the item. It's the item is already available inside owned items. Then we have to stop buying the item. So that's why we just made this function in order to check. And this will be bool type because we have to return it true or false. Basically we need to check the item is there or not. So let's use this if condition, and we will go to owned item list. Then let's use the contains function, and now it's gonna take the item. So let's pass our item. If that is the case, means the item is already inside our backpack, which is basically the owned item list. If that is the case, means item is there, then we have to return true. So we're gonna type return true because the item is there. Sorry, we're gonna type return true, and let's close that up semicolon. And let's suppose the item is not inside our owned items. So else if the item inside not owned items, then we're gonna return false because the item is not there. So we can return false just like that. Or if this seems pretty heavy texting, then you can simply use return owned item dot contains, then pass the item. Basically the same thing. For explanation I have done. And also we're gonna make a function to clear all of the items inside our owned items, or from the backpack we just want to remove all of the items inside our backpack, which is the owned item list. So we're gonna make a function. So let's make a public void, and we can call it something like clear. Let's make first a bracket and some curly brackets, and inside this function basically we just want to remove all of the items. So we will go to owned item list, and now we're gonna use this remove function. Remove sorry, not remove, basically we have to use this clear. So we're gonna use this clear function, and it's gonna clear all of the items inside our owned item list. Basically that is the now underneath our inventory manager we can see owned items list, basically the backpack, and it's totally empty. And now we need to call out the function this add item that we created inside inventory manager script. So we're gonna call this add item function in order to add the item to our owned item list. And for that we're gonna make a script. And if I collect this red one, then I just want to add the speed item. And if I collect the green one, then I want to add the jump item. And I already have the assets, you can see. So now we need to do the script. So I'm gonna choose so we will create a script. So just go over to your script folder or assets, right click, then go create mono behavior script, and you can call that script something like trigger add item to inventory or something just like that. and you can see I already created a script called trigger effect, which I don't want to use. So I'm gonna create another script. So I'm gonna right click, let's go create mono behavior script, and I'm gonna call this script at item 2. So I'm gonna call it at item 2 inventory. So let's call it something just like that. Now we're gonna attach the script to this red and the green one. So I'm gonna choose them by holding down control, and let's select the script and let's drag it over to add component section in the inspector. And now let's open up the script quickly. First thing, I'm gonna collapse at once. So firstly, I'm gonna open up the script, and we can just go ahead and we can remove the start and the update function we don't need. Instead, we're gonna use a on trigger enter 2D function. But before you use that, make sure you select your collectible items and then add an a collider 2D, and make sure you just check this is trigger as check. And also make sure you select your player and assign the player as a player tag. So select your player, click on this untag in the inspector, then add tag, create a new tag, and then save it and assign with the tag which you recently created. So I'm gonna open up my script quickly. So we're gonna use the on trigger enter 2D function, this on trigger enter 2D function, and we do know that this function get called when we trigger with something, and we can extract information what we trigger it with by taking this collision parameter. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna use that collision parameter in order to check if we trigger it with the player game object. If that is the case, it means that we need to add the item to the inventory. So we're gonna use the if condition. So let's use if condition firstly, and we will check that if collision dot game object. Collision dot game object basically means the player game object here, because we're gonna trigger with the player red, and the green gem just gonna trigger with our player. So collision dot game object over here basically simply the player. And now we're gonna access the tag, and we will check if it's equals to our player, and make sure you assign your player as a player tag. It means we are ready to add the item to the inventory. So we can simply call out the add item from this inventory manager script. So I'm gonna make this basically what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make this singleton pattern. And if you confused about that, then I will have a video in the description about singleton pattern. Go and check it out. So we're gonna make a public static so we can directly access, and we're gonna create a variable type, and the variable type will be the class name inventory manager, and let's call it something like instance, just like that. And I'm gonna remove the start function, I'm not gonna use it. Instead, I'm gonna use this awake function, and this awake function call right before our start function, and it's called only one time. So over here we just want to check. So let's use the if condition once again, and we will check that if our instance of this class, if it's not equal to null, it means there is a already instance of this class. Then what we're gonna do, we're gonna destroy that one. So we're gonna use this destroy function, and we're gonna destroy this dot game object, means the inventory script itself, or the game object you can think of the script is attached to. In our case, that is game manager. And let's suppose there is a no instance of this class. So else there, if there is a no instance of this class, then we're gonna set instance equal to this, just like that. And now we just made the singleton pattern, and let's go over to add item to inventory, and over here we can simply call the singleton pattern. So the first thing, we will go to inventory manager script, then we're gonna go to instant variable that we created, and now we're gonna call the add item function. And now it's gonna take the item that we want to add. So let's make a variable for our item. So we will go to top of our class, and let's make a variable. So we're gonna make a public, because we need a reference to this item variable, basically the assets that we created inside our Unity editor, basically that speed and the jump item. So we need a reference, so we're gonna make a public item data variable. Let's call it something like item. And now over here we're gonna put our item that we want to add. And after adding the item, we need to make sure we just destroy the green or the red gem itself. So now we're gonna use destroy function, and we just want to destroy itself. So we're gonna use this dot game object. It means referencing the green and the red gem itself. Now if we choose our green and the red gem, so if I choose the red one, then I just want to add the speed item. So underneath add item to inventory script, we can see item and it's a non-item data. So I'm gonna move over to my assets folder, and over here I'm gonna drag my speed item, basically the scriptable object script. And now I'm gonna choose the green one, and I'm gonna drag it the jump because I just want to add the jump. And we can just go ahead and we can play our game in order to check this out. And before I do that, I'm gonna choose my game manager game object, and underneath our inventory manager script on it item is 0. So whenever we're gonna trigger with the red and the green, we should able to see the speed and the jump item scriptable object assets underneath our owned items list or the backpack. You can see owned item list is empty, but as soon as we're gonna trigger with the red one, we can notice these owned items, and now it's contain the speed item data. And if we collect the green one, then we can see the jump item data, and it's gonna do that thing. So we can see these two items, and now we have to apply to our player. Once we're gonna add the speed item, then we need to speed up the our player speed and also the jump. So I hope you get the idea that how you can do this. And in the next tutorial we're gonna take a look on it how we can use those items in order to apply the effect on our player.